Hello everybody, Dan here again on a Sunday today. Not usually here on a Sunday, but that's alright. Been doing this forever, working on some interview questions. Found an interesting one, so let's get into it. So this is a Scrabble-score. This is marked as medium, but I'd say this is more easy, closer to easy. So given a word, compute the Scrabble-score. Each of these maps to this value. So here's an example. So we got some two uppercase situation here. We got, so immediately two things come to mind. And this is where I think in the interview process, one of the biggest things that you can do is use the right data structure and talk about why that you made the choice that you did. You know, when I'm interviewing people, something I'm looking for is not only that you default to the optimal solution, but you don't always default to the optimal solution. And that's fine as long as you can say what the other solution is and what are the trade-offs. So I put the two data structures that you might consider here. One is just a map. Now this looks like unappealing because it's just a lot of lines of like repetitive score, but you're doing all this upfront work so that the complexity at runtime is much better. And I'll show you what I mean when I code up the solutions that are sitting in my head right now. The other way to do it, that this looks a lot more compact, may look a little nicer, is put the letters at the index in an array of their value and then just add the index for which that letter, where that letter is. So let's code up a couple of these, and I'll show you what I mean when we talk about like big O complexity here. So we're looking for a function called score. So score function gets a word, and so we'll use this one first. So we're going to want to iterate over the word. So turn the string into an array. When we're going from an array to a value, so here we're hoping to return some integer. Anytime you're going from an array to a not array, use reduce, right? So we can use reduce. The thing we're going to do is a number, so we'll start with 0. And then never forget to return. So then next is going to be the letter. Let's rename that. And we simply want to say add the index in scores where the I'll just call it score since it's scores. That's probably a bad name, but that's okay. Where the score includes the letter. And what did I mess up? Uppercase. What else did I mess up? Score is not a function. Score is not a function. Expect score. Oh. Okay, so we got that working. But what is our complexity here? So we're spreading an array. We're iterating over each item. So already we have n, if word length is n. Find index is also iterating, potentially over the size of scores. So that's n plus whatever that is. And then we're doing an includes, which means we're iterating through each of these. These little hidden array functions do a lot of iterating. So we end up getting n, big O would be n times this length. Or if I don't know exactly what that would be technically. And plus, and then times that. So each one, it's going to potentially iterate through this. So like the worst case would be a bunch of t's, right? Where it's like has to go all the way to the last index. Maybe. Yeah, I think that would be the worst case, is like a bunch of t's. Yeah. So let's look at the, we'll compare that with the map solution, which is what I would default to. And even though it's a little uglier, we're going to very clearly see why this is much faster. So you do the same thing. We actually only have one return here. We only have a return here too. Hold on, hold on. Let's do some fanciness. This is a case of, I don't know why I have this weird bug of like wanting to shorten everything down as much as possible. And I certainly would not do this in a code base that's maintained by other people. Just to be clear, I do not recommend this. But you could make this all one line of code. All right. But now, like, even if you want to debug or like console log out here, you have to start trying to figure out where to add parens. So like, even if I could do that, or not parens, or like curly braces. So even if I could do that, I wouldn't in real life. And I would count that against somebody. Well, I wouldn't count that against somebody in an interview as long as they explained, you know, gave the same sort of thing that I did. So, yeah. Let's do the map version. Let's do it in old school version. How would you do this in a very iterative old school style of programming? You would say sum, you'd have a for loop. You'd probably do this. So 0, I less than word dot length. You see this all the time in languages. And this is going to be, typically when you do the manual loops like this, you're guaranteeing a lot faster. So now I have my map up here, so I just need to index scores map sub a, and it's going to give me the score. And it just gives it to me in without any looping. So sum plus equals word or score map word I, right? Yeah. And we messed up. Scores map is not defined. What's it called? Scores map with an S. Copy and paste for the win. Cool. So we did that, and now what's our complexity? We're looping over the word, so that's n, and we're not doing any looping here. So it's just n. It's constant. It's constant time. So this is great. I don't know if technically this is constant time too, because it's a known value, but it's going to be word times this potentially. I don't know. I should look up more about exact ways to do big O. But of course, if we can do it with one line there, we can do it with one line here too. So let's do that. Don't forget the two uppercase. Reduce, of course. Can we do something other than a reduce? Like, what I'm thinking might be nicer is if we actually map and then reduce, because then the reduce is just a sum. Let's try it. I don't know. When in doubt, try it. Letter. And the letter is going to become an integer given the map. Reduce, and then we just do a, b, because we're doing the yield sum. A plus b. And that works. Not. Whoa, empty input doesn't work here. Okay. Okay. What do we get? We're trying to do on something empty. Interesting. So this doesn't, it's not as robust. Let me just explain this real quick though. If you don't put a default value, the first iteration of reduce in JavaScript, A will be the first item in the array, and B will be the second item in the array. And from then on, A will be the accumulator, and B will be the next value. So when you're just adding a list of numbers, this is how you do it. That's why instead of accumulator next, like I usually do, I just did A, B, A, B. But that appears to not be happy because when I'm mapping over an empty array, I can't then reduce over that, which is odd because, oh, I can't do it without an initial value. Because the initial value needs to be 0. So yeah, when it's what it was trying to do is take the first value and the second value from an empty array. Of course, there is no second value. So there you go. So cool, that's one way. But this is not, to me, my ideal sort of one-liner solution would just be the reduce. Let's just do it all at once, right? A letter, and then you just do plus equals, because this is going to return the result, so we don't need a curly's or return statement. Scores map letter. Nope. Psst. What did we mess up? That's going to return that. Or 0? Oh, we didn't provide a default again. I don't think we need this. Yeah, if we needed to do some checking, like if there was a letter that is not a valid letter, then we could do an or 0. But so this would be, I think, with the caveat of I would keep this more verbose for modifiability. This would be my ideal if somebody defaulted to this in an interview situation. But I'm curious actually what other people did. Maybe they did something cool and different. Let's check it out. Submit this. And let's look. People are going to be confused looking at mine with all the different solutions. That's okay. Let's look at the next one. Yep. Lowercase, and then did a two lowercase and a split instead of a ... It's fine. Actually wonder what the speed is. When ... or I should say spread, when the spread operator first came out, split was much faster, or right up from. But I'm sure V8 actually compiles them both to the same underlying structure, so it's probably fine now. And then they did a for each. I feel like in a lot of these, it's just a case of people practicing JavaScript who have not used or maybe are not fully comfortable with reduce, which actually makes me think my using reduce might not always be a good thing. It depends on the sort of culture of coders I'm working with. If nobody I'm working with understands reduce, then I should not use reduce. And even in an interview, if they're like, we just shy away from reduce because it seems too complicated, then it's fine. That's absolutely fine. I'll do everything without reduce. This looks very similar to the first one that I had. Very similar to the first one that I had using the map. Let's see what else we got here. Anything interesting? The old for in. Yeah. I avoid the for in because almost always you can use an array function, and I never remember for of and for in and when the right time to use those is. When you're what's nice about this is there is no conversion to an array. See, so because it's iterable. I thought strings weren't iterable. No, they are iterable. They're not like arrays though. They're array-ish. Like, I don't know what the right terminology is there. And doing the two lowercase in here is going to be very costly. Right? Because word letter. Wait, how does this even work? They're doing the word letter. Oh, yeah. So they're two lowercasing every substring instead of just doing two lowercase at the top. So this is going to be very suboptimal. You have to be careful any functions to call them outside of loops if possible. But the for-in is interesting. I wonder actually if the optimal solution is a for-in because you don't have to do that array conversion. Would be interesting to look up. This might be a very optimal solution here, with the exception of the two lower. It's cool. Oh, here we have a for-in. Also doing the two lower inside using an index. So using the array version. All right. Yeah, interesting. Also defining the array in the function. So every time the function calls, it has to recreate this constant. So I would pull that out. Using the ... and then a for-in of s of scores. Okay, some questionable choices here. So you already see there's a nested loop, and then this is another loop, and then they're calling the function in that, oh gosh, inside that triple nested loop. Yeah, gonna say that's interesting solution. Dot split for each. Anytime you see the for each, you know there's some side effectiness probably going on. In this case, it's changing total, which means that the inner function is not pure. I tend to like pure functions. Ooh, nicely formatted. That I think is one of the biggest reason people shy away from these maps, is because it's like, it's so many lines. But if you can format it nicely like this, okay, it's not as bad. And you got the one-liner. He's got the reduce. Ooh, two lowercase inside. That's the one thing I would change here. I would two lowercase here. Just do it once. Yeah. Interesting. All right, I think we've exhausted the option. Whoa, hold up. What is going on here? Okay, defining inside again. You pull this out of the function so that it doesn't have to redefine this every time it runs. Cache off the length as all uppercase. Usually you'd use all uppercase if it's a const that's not going to change, just by convention, not going to change, because of course you can change the const. You can't change the reference of a const, but you can change the inner values. Don't need the quotes. Key to key, so they're changing the name from input to key. They're checking for a no length. Otherwise, if it's 1, otherwise, okay. So this is interesting. If you have a large data set of input that is mostly 0 and 1 letters, this is more optimal than what I have. Because they're only going into the split map, loop logic. They're completely shortcutting out of the loop logic if it's 0 or 1. That's actually, it's interesting. This combined with the for-in situation might be the most optimal. Of course, assuming you move this out and do the two upper in the right. Wait, hold on. Why not use the key? The key is only used here. Why not use the key here, and then you don't have to call to uppercase? Okay, that just seems like a mistake. And look at that. Used the same thing that I ran into. I wonder if they ran into the problem of no default, and then said, well, instead of a default, I'll check for that case. I wonder if that's what happened. Well, if I ever find this person's video, I can see what they were thinking. All right, I think this is it for a Sunday. Have a good weekend, y'all.